So OutSystems offers a way to simplify the process of modernizing software, because you can build a site, you can consume, services and API from your legacy systems, you can connect to your own database and use your own data. It is pretty flexible, right?
Hello, Vera, Tiago, and welcome to Software Engineering Daily. And today we're going to be talking about developer advocacy in the low-code ecosystem, particularly at OutSystems. OutSystems is a low-code platform for enterprise, and Vera here has been working there for quite some time now. So we're going to dive into all the insight that Vera has to offer on this subject. Developer advocacy in low-code is, to me, definitely the future of where technology is heading, and it makes tech more accessible to all. So we're keeping up with the trends here at Software Engineering Daily, and we'll go ahead and get started. So Vera, go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do at OutSystems.
Oh, thank you, Kylie. First of all, thank you for having me. So I'm a former developer, software developer, turned into developer advocate. I've been in the developer relations space for 6-7 years now. I was born a DevRel at OutSystems because I joined OutSystems 10 years ago. So it's quite a ride, right? And yeah, I'm excited to be here today, share my challenges and what I have learned in this space, advocating and, promoting a low-code tool among developer communities.
Awesome. So you've been in the space for so long, and what majority of that time have you been at OutSystems? And can you tell us more about what OutSystems does in particular?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so OutSystems is a company, but it's also a product, right? So OutSystems, our company is called OutSystems, but we have a product called OutSystems Platform. And essentially, we have an IDE, we have some console, so we have various products, which the goal is to automate software developer and improve developer productivity. So yeah, we are a dev tool. We provide a visual language. Actually, the way you code with OutSystems is you drag and drop stuff to the screen. Those widgets, we call it widgets, represents hundreds of lines of code. In other words, yes, we generate code, but we also give the possibility of developers going beyond that visual tool. So, for example, you can drag a widget which represents a SQL query, but if you're not, enough satisfied with the result, you can put your own SQL on it, and that's roughly how it works. So when I joined OutSystems, by the way, I started my career by being a PHP developer. Then I did a bit of .NET for a couple of years, and then I decided I wanted to learn something new. And it was, a funny situation because by the time that I joined OutSystems, I was a bit of skeptical, right? I was, I'm not sure this is for me, but I'm looking to learn a new thing. So, and head to my, portfolio, a new tool. So let's try it out, right? So I applied for OutSystems to be a software engineer, and I did professional services for 3 years. And then I started evolving, to a role of more an educator inside, right? I was the one onboarding and training people with OutSystems, right? Teaching them OutSystems. And one day, I joined the product team to be developer relations. So interesting ride.
That definitely quite the ride. Wow. And you know what? I see that a lot too in my experience, the role of being an educator in developer advocacy and in developer relations in general. You kind of end up having to educate your users and also just the general developer communities as well. And so that's really cool. It definitely attracts like a certain type of person into the role as well. Not every developer is great at communicating to the point that they can also be an educator as well. So it's quite a valued skill. And one of the biggest challenges you can face being a developer relations expert is the education side of it. So speaking of OutSystems, so what problems exactly are they solving? It seems overall they are making development easier as their solution, just overall providing an easier experience to develop code. But are there any like specific things that they focus on or that they're known for, or is it just more like a general sense they make everything easier?
Yeah. So yeah, when this all started 20 years ago, our founders, had this vision of making, software easier, right? Of making software development easier, right? Because it's very manual. When you look into traditional code, it's very manual. It requires a lot of, handwriting and stuff like that. So the goal is to, improve the way or revolutionize the way software is built. Um, and we accomplished that. So the way, we are building software, or the way people, our customers, are building software without systems is way different, right? There's a lot of automation. So all the plumbing, boring tasks that you get with traditional code, um, we tackle by offering, this pre-built components and this pre-built way of, doing software. But yeah, the agility here is what if you want to go beyond this visual coding way, right? It's you can, right? You can. So you can extend with your own code, and you can leverage automation, but also, not hit a wall with a product like this. And essentially, what we are trying to solve, for example, one of the things that we address is legacy code, right? So there's a lot of, legacy systems, huge systems inside enterprise companies that no one wants to touch, right? And probably it's not that developers code, right? Probably other developers built that. Is a huge system. There's a lot of sensitive data and volume of data, and people don't want to touch that, right? So OutSystems offers a way to simplify the process of modernizing software, because you can build a site, you can consume, services and API from your legacy systems. You can connect to your own database and use your own data. It is pretty flexible, right? So addressing legacy systems is one of our main core values. But yeah, essentially agility in building software, because around the world, there's a lot of problems that can be solved through technology. We understand that there is not enough developers, and software development takes time, right? So low-code tools like OutSystems and no-code tools, it's a way, to improve that and to tackle, developer shortage, right? Because it's easier, it's faster, and requires less people to do, what you need to do to build software.
Nice. So you're able to automate all the boring stuff or the legacy code, which can be such a pain to deal with, so that you can actually focus on real, more pressing problems, or even just more entertaining problems to solve as well. So it just seems to increase the overall developer satisfaction. So that's really awesome. That's really cool. And I really like the visual aspect of it as well. We're seeing a lot of tools being implemented in that way now, as tech has to become more accessible for an ever-growing digital world. And I think that's really essential to where the world is heading at this point, with everybody being just glued to technology. We need to understand it more, and we can't expect everybody to be a hardcore hands on the keyboard coder. So I really like that. OutSystems sounds awesome. And again, I talked to some colleagues before this, and they were like, oh my gosh, we love OutSystems. So it's
nice.
definitely something that developers are enthusiastic about, me included. So that leads me to my next question. Throughout your experience at OutSystems, what levels of enthusiasm towards low to no code have you witnessed? Is there enough users, or are you always having to convince people to join the bandwagon onto low code, no code? So kind of describe the growth that you're witnessing in the low code ecosystem.
Yeah. So I will be, very transparent here. Low code is not seen as an obvious choice for, what we call hardcore developers, right? The traditional developers. Right now, some universities start teaching low code and no code, but they still, go through the traditional, path of learning how to develop software. And that is a huge, challenge for us to tackle, because when people get out of the college, they don't trust low code, because it's something that they are not familiar with, right? The same with no code. Adding on top of that, no code and low code means that you are, giving away control, because you cannot control every single line of code of your application, right? So one of the objections that we can is, how can we control the source code? In my, my fight is, you don't need to control the source code, because it's very well built, so you don't need to worry about that. You just need to focus on, the challenging things, right? Like you said, so it's about working smarter, not harder, right? But yeah, so we have seen some evolution in the level of enthusiasm. When I started, we had a very hard, time in promoting a tool like this, because there's a generation of developers, probably my generation, which is very attached to the stack that they learn, right? So, for example, I was a .NET developer. I'm an expert in .NET, so why I would, adopt another tool, because I'm happy with the tool that I have, right? And yeah, so developers are pretty emotional and pretty enthusiastic with the tools that already, have and are using. So, and they are very resistant to adopt new ones, unless, right, they have a specific problem that a tool like ours can solve, and, can make their life easier. In the new generations, probably, I don't know, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, you see that developers are more pragmatic. At least this is how I feel, right? They probably use, a variety of tools in their day to build software. So they are not attached to a stack. Maybe they are looking to what is the next big thing, right? They keep an eye on the future to see, if my skill is still relevant. Should I adopt these skills? Should I use other products, right? Smarter products to do what I want to do. So you see, a bit more enthusiasm and interest in this area. But in the past, when I started, it was pretty rough. So it was challenging to, get people excited about our systems and use a low-code tool. So yeah, but good things that this is evolving, and people, there's evidence that actually this can help developers. So people are getting more excited and more interested in learning more about this type of tools, which is good.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that sentiment that the younger crowd is more open to using these tools. You see that just with the community growth, for example, at Notion, a tool like that is definitely, that's a no-code tool. And yeah, it's very popular amongst Gen Z, and the community growth for that is massive. And I think that sentiment with using tools that might not be specifically for coding throughout the youth kind of transfers over to them wanting to use tools similar to that, but also with coding as well. Whereas back in the day, we had MySpace, for example, where we even had control over how our pages looked.
Yeah.
And it seems that the younger generation is more willing to try new things and to also just get things done as well without sticking emotionally to their tools, because developers can be emotional.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, as a developer advocate, I'm sure you totally understand. A lot of people will say, hey, they're not emotional. They're the logical developer types. And you and I, as developer advocates, can beg to differ that, ask them about their tools, ask them about their stack. You'll see the emotions come through then, for sure. Awesome. So it appears that OutSystems has experienced slow and steady linear growth. Have there been moments in time where that growth was more exponential, maybe as the result of a certain current event happening in the tech world, or has it just been overall a steady flow of growth?
Yeah, I would say it was more a steady flow of growth, and digging into a bit of that. This is our tool is for enterprise software development, so we don't see phenomena like we see with Notion, right? That the community or people who are using Notion are driving a lot of traffic, right? Driving a lot of acquisition for Notion because everyone has FOMO, right? Fear of missing something. So, people are trying this, so let me try. For OutSystems, it's hard to achieve that because usually, yes, developers can try out OutSystems, but in the end, they are not the ones who are influencing the purchase decision. So we sell a license, which is kind of expensive license, right? So usually who takes the decision to adopt a product like that, like ours, is what we call the IT decision makers, which eventually are people, who were developers in the past, but are more in the CTO level, right? They see the big picture, they think about efficiency, right? They see the things in a different way, right? So they are not the end users, so they are not the ones who are concerned about how can I be more productive, what does this mean for my career, right? This is the perception of our end user. They are more like, okay, how can I revamp these systems? How can I build the applications that I need to build faster and more efficient? And that leads us to, to a growth more, linear, like you said, right? Because we still go through the traditional sales cycle, right? So we rely on sales, and we don't rely much on community growth or product-led growth that can lead into those spikes of usage, right, and acquisition. So I would say,
Nice. That makes for a great career trajectory as well. Getting to experience that linear growth through time, and that's really nice. That's really cool, and that's definitely in line with the growth that we're seeing in the overall low-code ecosystem as well. So what would be your advice, kind of before I move into the community source questions, which, by the way, are a little bit more technical, but not too much. But before we move on to that, what is your advice to somebody who, let's say, they want to be in the position that you're in? They want to be a part of a company's long-term growth in the no to low-code ecosystem. What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, so I would say that if you want to get into the space, you need to try out, different products or the product itself. So, for example, if you have a company in mind, just start by, trying out or giving, at least a big picture or what the product does. Because, being in this role, as a developer advocate for a low-code tool, it means that you are an educator, like we mentioned, but also an educator of technology. So you need to understand how to position your tool among other players, right? So you need to understand the ecosystem in general. Even when you talk about no code and low code, you can drill down into different tiers. So for example, you have tools that tackle specific use cases, right? So you need to understand how to adapt your narrative to get people to use your product, or how your product will benefit certain personas. But you also have tools that offer value to a broader scope, right? So probably it tackles very use cases, right? So you need to understand what is the real value of the product that you want to become an advocate, right? So you need to understand the value of that, and you need to prepare for that. So understanding, the tool, understanding the players, and of course, going to more, practical advice, like, okay, I selected this company, I want to join this company, right? I want to be a developer advocate. I would say you start by, asking the questions or trying to get the answer to this question, which is, okay, so does this company needs what I need to offer, right? And when you go to what I need to offer, is consider that the developer relations space is very broad, right? You have different types of players. So we have the community managers, community growth and engagement managers. You have developer evangelists. You have developer advocates. You have developer experience specialists. You have developer marketing, right? And this can be, so it can be the same person doing all this stuff, which is, very common, right? It's the one team show, right? One man show or one woman show, right? So one person that does all of that, but it can be, specific job requirements. Having said that, so for example, someone is looking for a developer advocate. Maybe that person is looking for someone that does video content. Maybe that person is looking for someone knows tools and, is expert in creating process to drive feedback from end users to the product, right? Maybe that person needs to know how to do research and create narratives, right? And messaging, which is more developer marketing, right? So developer advocate can mean different things. So you need to understand what are the skills that you have, what you want to do. So for example, you want to do video content, right? You need to look for an opportunity where you can do that. So you need to look for a company who has that need, right? So that you can contribute. Because imagine that you apply for a position as a developer advocate, right? And you understand that the role is not exactly what you want to do, right? Because it depends on the situation, depends on the company, it depends on the problems that the company is trying to solve. So yeah, my advice, practical advice for someone who wants to enter this world is preparation, right? Research, preparation on the product and on the things that the role requires.
Right. So market research is like the key to this. And developer advocacy does mean so many things to different people. And so really quick, before I actually move on to the crowdsourced questions, what does your role in particular look like? So for example, are you more focused on social media? Are you more focused on conferences? Where exactly are you sourcing these developer influencer decision makers that are making these decisions to onboard OutSystems onto their teams?
Yeah, so our priority have changed, right, over the time. We also had some reorgs and we moved, initially we started the product organization, then to marketing, then we moved to product again. And our priorities have been, shifting year over year because, you need to solve one problem at a time. So right now my team is more focused on creating credibility. This is, a serious tool for serious developers, right? So it involves creating more brand awareness, right? It involves creating more education about what are the use cases that our tool can tackle. So it involves us being in developer conferences, creating content. So content is one of our pillars. It also involves us a little bit of feedback for the product because we are end users of our products ourselves. So we are early, users of early versions. So yeah, but I would say it's more focused right now, creating content and be where developers are, right? Engaging conversations and talk, openly about tools like us. I would compare and talk about technology in general, mostly that. But in the past, so for example, when I started, our focus was huge on community. Right? We want to make sure that people who were using our product had the proper support. So we had to invest a little bit on community, make sure that users were helping each other. We had scalable ways for people to get unblocked, right? So we use this term a lot, which is, okay, I'm developing, I get blocked. So can I reach out to get help, or what are the things that we don't block product? So that was our initial focus. Then at a certain time, we started with the video content, right? Understood that, okay, we need to be more present with bite-sized content, right, to drive interest and awareness. So there was a time we were focused on that. It doesn't mean that right now we don't do that, right? It's not our focus. Right? Our focus is more written content, samples, speaking at conferences, and many other stuff. So just to give you an idea, our developer relations team have two groups, which is one is community management, growth and engagement, right? It's mostly about program managers, community managers, growing and supporting our community. And then we have the developer advocacy, which is more on the technical side. So we have our own programs, right, to tackle our goals and objectives, but we also provide support to the community managers. So for example, we have a user group program. We have someone who is running user groups around the world with our chapter leaders and so on. They may need our help to suggest topics to discuss on those user groups, to find speakers, right? Because Many times we find or we engage with speakers from our community, but also from inside. It's important that our internal teams also have this connection with the field. So yeah, it's a mix of a support role, but also driving other programs to achieve our main goals.
Yeah, I actually see that a lot in the developer relations field, where the duties between growth and also maintaining what you have are somewhat divided, but also equally important.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that I see a lot of. So now we'll go ahead and go on to the crowdsourced questions. And that first one being, of course, we have to talk about AI. We just have to. It's such a huge thing in the field. We just had OpenAI release ChatGPT, and OpenAI's APIs being used everywhere. We're seeing it implemented everywhere. Is that in the works at OutSystems, or it sounds like you've already kind of made your own automation tools already, so it may or may not be necessary, I would think. But with OpenAI making AI so accessible to tech companies, do you see there being use cases in the future to develop on that? Or is OutSystems just going to, if it's not broken, don't fix it, and take that approach?
We have our AI team inside engineering product management. And our IDE has a lot of, the automation that is done on IDE is through AI, right? So for example, we have things like natural language processing. So for example, you type what you want and that will generate SQL. For example, give me all the customers who order product X from this date to this date, right? You write and then it generates a select star from table X and stuff like that. So we have stuff like that. We also have code duplicate finder, right? So when you are building your code, right, or you are using IDE, you are building your code, the IDE warns you, there's a duplicate somewhere else, right? And you need to optimize your code, right? So that prevents you to go into technical debt, right? So it means that you have, a lot of spreaded code that you need to maintain. And we continue to, grow our efforts into AI, and how could AI, help us in our product and the experience that we provide to developer. And probably I can't say that now because by the time this episode is launched, it will be public. But in fact, we are, doing something similar to ChatGPT, but for OutSystems, which is essentially you tell what you want to do to the IDE, and the IDE will generate the code for you. Of course, visual code. But yeah, we are working. We have already POC working, so we are moving towards that. But yes, AI is a big thing for us. So we have a pretty active team researching, prototyping, and adding to our product every day. So yeah, AI is a big thing for us.
Yes, definitely. AI and also low code. I could see those going together hand in hand.
Yeah.
Awesome. So one question that I received, now I'm not a data expert. I'm moving towards that. So I hope I asked this in the right way. But what are some data requirements for OutSystems? So is it a very heavy on the data platform or not? If that makes sense. So is it how heavy does it rely on data, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I don't know. Let me see if I can provide an answer because I'm not sure I understand this question exactly. But the way this works, or OutSystems works, is you build everything visually. As soon as you compile and publish to the server, it will generate, code, essentially, right? So from the database side, what it happens is, for example, you build your data model visually, create the tables, the columns, put types on the columns, and as soon as you publish or compile the code, it will create, essentially SQL in your database, right? And the database is SQL Server, whatever. So regular database models, right? Systems. So you can start from scratch, right? Building your own database and your own data. You can have your own databases and create batch process to transfer data. you can connect an application built without systems to your own database, right? Instead of creating your database inside your application. So yeah, in our case, it's pretty, it's pretty flexible, I would say. So we don't rely on data. We can handle large batch of data, small batch of data. But yeah, my answer was useful. If it was not, for people who are listening, feel free to reach out directly, and I can explain further.
that makes sense. I think the question was gearing towards like how much you rely on data. Is it a data intensive platform or not? But it seems, as you said, flexible. It can be either or. Yeah, and you can handle whatever data is thrown at it.
Yeah, when it comes to develop software, yeah, it's pretty flexible. If the question is about if we rely on data to dictate the roadmap of our product, can be slightly different. Well, the answer is not the same, right? But of course, we are always looking to developer experience. Like, we have lots of data around that, and we are always, fine tuning the product towards providing a better experience for developers. In that sense, we rely heavily on data. Yes.
Sure. And so, without giving away trade secrets, could you give any insight at all into OutSystems monetization models? How do you monetize a tool like this, or what programs in particular tend to return the most ROI? Or perhaps any platforms that you focus on, or social media platforms that you focus on? Just kind of curious if you can give any insight into that. Of course, not asking for any trade secrets, of course.
No, that is a very, easy to answer. So the way we monetize OutSystems is we have, a license. And the license is very tied to consumption, right? So it's depending on how many end users your application have, how complex your application have, you have different, let's say, sizes of license, right? We have a baseline, and then you grow as you need. Of course, we have a free version, right? The free version, we call it the free personal environment. That environment runs on the cloud, AWS cloud, but it has some limitations. So, for example, the database space is smaller, right? Is limited. It only allows one developer to work on that environment, right? It's for personal use. It's like a sandbox, right? But yeah, we make money by selling our license to companies want to build software with us. So the ID is free, all the tools are free, but in order for you to be able to work with OutSystems and have an application running, you pay a license, essentially.
All right. Yeah, definitely simple enough, and something that we see in a lot of other low-code platforms as well. And so now moving on to the conclusion of our talk here. I've learned so much just from talking to you. This has been very insightful. So thank you so much for being here. Final few questions now. Where do you see the low to no code ecosystem, let's say in 5 to 10 years, having already been in the ecosystem now for as long as you've been?
Yeah. So the way I see it, or maybe I should start by the evolution. I always felt, not right now, specifically right, I don't feel this way, but I always felt like, people who were using low codes were considered second, class developers, like, developers that were not hardcore developers, the one that use, the traditional tools. And I think it was, some stigma or something around people who were using this. As we evolved and we see more, tools getting to the space, probably developers will start seeing this as just another tool, right? Because, like you said, yeah, developers are pretty emotional, attached to their stack, but the stack should not define, the developer that you are, right? Because you are not a good developer because of the stack, but because of the knowledge and the experience you have, right? So the way I see this is developers leveraging this type of tools, being less emotional about it, right? Feeling, okay, I know these tools. I have 10 tools that I usually use. I will use low code and no code to build this type of applications and to address these use cases. And probably I will, need to rely on traditional code to tackle these use cases, right? So I see this more not a conversion path. It's not, okay, now you are a traditional developer and you are converted into a low-code, no-code developer, right? It's not a conversion, but it's more like, okay, it's just another tool, right? Another tool or to help your job. So yeah, I see adoption being easier. So for you and me, right, that we're trying to say this is good for you, PayPal, right? I see adoption being easier because people will, have evidence that actually this can help, right? And will be more clear how this can help and what are the use cases tools like this can help.
Exactly. I totally agree with all that sentiment right there. I see that being the playbook for the future as well. As we have technology becomes more advanced, naturally there's going to be more legacy code, more technical debt, and more problems that developers are not going to want to focus on because there's going to be harder problems that require more of our attention. So it makes sense to have a tool that automates those things that are easy to deal with so that developers can focus on more difficult problems to solve, because there's just going to be an increasingly more difficult problems to solve in the tech industry right now. So yeah, that's awesome. So final question. If you are interested in using OutSystems, how can you get started and where can you learn more?
Yeah, so you can, like I said, there's a free version. You just go to outsystems.com and you'll see try now for free. It will redirect you to a form. You need to put your name, your email, and as soon as you click submit, this will set up an account for you on a cloud, again, on that AWS cloud. That is your server, right? That is your playground where you're going to play. And you need to download the IDE, right? Download the IDE, connect to the server, and then you can start playing around. I really recommend you starting with the 5-minute tutorial. So inside the IDE on top, we have something that we call 5-minute tutorial. You click on that, and literally on the IDE, you'll see an arrow that points, okay, just drag this, and at the bottom, it will explain what type of code that is generating, what it means, what you are doing, right? And as soon as you publish, I think 5 minutes, you build a small app, like a to-do list app, you publish, and then you have it available online. That is our wow factor. So I really recommend you to test it out. If for the ones, want to give it a try, just give me a shout out on social so that I can, understand how was your experience, so that you can try also, to try to improve that experience. That's the first experience for all the developers out there.
Wow, that's awesome. You mentioned that being the wow factor, that you could just go ahead and build for example, like a to-do list app and just launch it from there. And my first thought was wow, and you called it a wow factor. So definitely that was a wow factor. And all Vera's socials will be posted, whether you're listening to this on the podcast or on YouTube or on the blog. They will be posted. So definitely follow Vera to learn more. And thank you so much for joining us at Software Engineering Daily today, Vera. I've learned so much. And I'm sure all of the listeners are also gained so much insight into developer relations and also the no-code ecosystem and OutSystems. So thank you so much for joining us today. And definitely follow Vera online, everybody. See ya.
Thank you, Kylie. Thanks, everyone.